welcome to the January 27th meeting of the Rotary Club of Des Moines. It is delightful to see all of you here with us today. Nobody signed up to help with a moment of inspiration. I need you all to step up. So do consider signing up in the future to help with that, but I will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance in four-way test at this time. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now the four-way test.
Is it true? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
And now if you'd wave at your fellow Rotarians or elbow bump, whatever you're comfortable with. All right, we are delighted to welcome several guests today. So on the PowerPoint screen are their full names, but we have Laura and Catherine as guests of Skate Wooten. So we are the awesome table of Catherines, and we all spell our names the same way, so whoop whoop for us. Val is the guest of Doug Saltzgaber. Jeff is the guest of Gordon Cheeseman. Where's Jeff? All right, welcome Jeff. Debbie is a guest of Lance Richard. Welcome. And Steve is the guest of Sharon Vickery. Where are you? Hello, welcome. We are delighted to have all of you here today. And if you have guests that you would like to invite to future meetings, please do. There are sign-ups on the table for the Iowa Wolves Rotary Night to End Polio. That event is scheduled for February 5th, so this is the last opportunity to sign up. If you are not interested in attending, you can still buy tickets, and those will be donated to a children's group that can otherwise not afford to attend. So either way, whether you want to attend the game or if you want to have your tickets donated, please do that. With all of those, a portion of ticket sales go to End Polio Now. And thank you yet again to Jeff Stickle, who every year steps up to lead our club in organizing this event. So thank you, Jeff. Also, please, if you haven't already, sign up for President-elect Matt Busick's February Fling on February 17th at the Iowa Tap Room. It promises to be a fun, delightful evening of fellowship. Reservations must be made by February 3rd if you are going to attend. An extra special thank you to Susan Voss. Thank you, Susan, for being a sponsor of our February Fling this year. Guests are welcome at this February Fling, and the same charge applies to everyone, Rotarians and guests. So make sure, if you have not yet already, get your reservation in no later than February 3rd if you want to attend. And with all of that, I'm going to turn it over to past President Skeet Wooten, who will introduce our program. Skeet? Oh, come on, his whole family is here!
Your sincerity is apparent. Thank you, Catherine. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Arthur C. Clarke, who was a science fiction writer and a futurist, said that. You might also remember that he wrote 2001: A Space Odyssey in 1968. Technology has changed our lives for the better, since the discovery of the wheel to the microchip, and will continue to change our lives daily. Medicine is amongst the most rapidly evolving technologies in the world today. We've come a long way from bleeding and leeches to the point where complex surgeries are almost routine, and the delivery of that surgery is something that surgeons 30 years ago would not recognize or even believe possible. It is my great pleasure today to introduce Brad Kruger of Intuitive Surgical as our speaker. Brad is a Des Moines native, the youngest of 5 boys, a graduate of Dowling Catholic and Iowa State University, where he majored in business. As a Buccaneer fan, yes, you might remember that he is one of the first family of Des Moines hockey. Intuitive was founded in 1995 and is now a member of the S&P 500. It's a leading pioneer in minimally invasive or robotic surgery, most notably with the development of the Vinci surgical system. Brad has spent his entire professional career at Intuitive and is now the clinical sales manager of the state of Iowa. He is an up-and-coming leader in a very dynamic and exciting field. When he isn't working, which isn't often, he can be found still playing hockey, tooling around his acreage and coming on his side-by-side on a local golf course, or spending time with his 2 English Cree retrievers, Freddie and Stella. His wonderful wife is Catherine, who by chance happens to be my daughter. And they are expecting their first child in a few weeks. And as a courtesy to Brad, please don't ask him about his father-in-law during the Q&A. Please give a warm rotary welcome to Brad Kruger.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Skeet, and thank you all. I'm excited to be here and honored. Like Skeet said, I've worked my entire professional career with one company. It'll be 12 years in May, which is just crazy to think about. It's about 1/3 of my life. And you know, as you can imagine, through 12 years of working with that company, I've become extremely passionate about the technology and the impact it's having on changing the future of surgery across the rest of the world. And I can only hope that by the end of this, you have a little of that passion and think some of the same too. And so before I get into my slides, I wanted to share just a little bit about who I am and how I got to be here today talking to you about robotic surgery. So like Skeet said, I'm the youngest of 5 boys. I'm the cute chunky baby sitting on the ice there when I was 1. My dad was from Minnesota, so we were all born and raised in Des Moines with hockey sticks in our hands. And as you can imagine, being the youngest of 5 boys, I got picked on a lot by my older brothers, and that's why I'm so tough. But there's no questions asked, I am a mama's boy. This was over a year ago when I got married to my best friend when I had hair. But I know I speak for all my brothers that we got our work ethic, our emotion, our love for people from my dad, but we got our toughness and our courage from our mom. When my mom was 13 years old, her dad died of a heart attack, so she basically raised all of her younger siblings. When she was 18 years old, she had my oldest brother, Scott. When she was 35, she had her favorite son, Brad. And when she was 53, she had an open hysterectomy procedure. And so an open surgery, a surgeon will make a big incision in the abdomen. They'll use their hands and tools to do the procedure. And like most open hysterectomies at the time, my mom stayed in the hospital for 3 nights. Was discharged to go home and got home and wasn't feeling any better, started to get a little nauseous and then sick, and so they took her back to the hospital where they found out she had an infection from the incision from her surgery. And so I share this with you. When she missed my state hockey tournament, it was a month and a half after my surgery, but I share this with you because the same surgeon that did my mom's surgery now does robotics. And their patients go home within 24 hours, if not the same day, and they could go back to work sometimes within a week. And it's not that that surgeon didn't have the skills to be doing the operation when my mom had her surgery, but when you enable a surgeon with technology to do minimally invasive surgery, you can have some pretty good outcomes. And so this is an example of an open surgery incision. This is potentially what smaller incisions with a robot could look like. And my goal is to share what the impact of these incisions, and maybe someday what an incision like this can have on hospitals and surgeons, and most importantly in patients. And so a few things I'll talk about to kind of hit that home is a little bit the history of Intuitive. Why robotic surgery? It's also important to know robots aren't cheap. And so how does this make sense financially for hospitals, and what's the return on investment for them? And I'm biased, but the technology is amazing. Some cool stuff, so I'll show you a little bit of what we have and some of the future things I can legally share with you. So like Skeet said, Intuitive started in 1996 in a room much smaller than we're in today in the top right corner of this building in Sunnyvale, California, which is basically Silicon Valley. In that small room, they were working on the first prototype of a robotic system. And robotics, actually, the original idea was around battlefield surgery and having remote surgery as an option. Stanford Research Institute and NASA bought it from the government, and then Intuitive brought it from them with the idea of, instead of doing open heart surgery and breaking open the ribs, let's do those small little incisions you saw in that picture between the ribs. What the prototype was called at the time was Lenny, for Leonardo da Vinci. And I've got pictures here. I'll kind of go over the three components of a robotic system. The top picture is the prototype, and the bottom picture is what it looks like now, just so you have a better understanding of what it looks like. The first piece is called a patient cart. This really becomes the eyes and the hands of the surgeon. There's 4 arms on a patient cart, so a surgeon actually gets control of their arm here, and I'll show you in a little bit. Once this gets set up in the operating room, the surgeon will then go sit in the corner of the room at a surgeon console, where they have foot pedals and hand controllers, where the instruments that are in the patient cart are controlled by the surgeon sitting down comfortably, and they control the camera and the tiny instruments. The final piece, this is called a vision tower, and it is what it looks like in the top picture prototype. It's a lot of computers. It is what every component connects into and keeps everything running. We have some advanced energy instruments that plug into it, as well as there's a screen in the top that the rest of the room can see what's going on inside the abdomen. Looks a little something like this from the surgeon console view. So these 2 little instruments are the surgeon's hands. Instead of big hands inside the abdomen, these are tiny little 8mm hands. The surgeon sitting at the console, they're moving 3 millimeters. The robot can scale it down to 1 millimeter. So they're 3 times more precise when doing dissection and any other drill that you'd be doing in the operation. You can see a dime there. That's just for reference of size. So you can imagine how beautiful this picture looks magnified of anatomy. We're only looking at a 2D picture. A surgeon sees in 3D high definition while they're sitting at the console. There's another third hand that's actually holding that dime up, so the surgeon doesn't just have 2 hands, they actually assist themselves, give them full autonomy in the operation. They're not relying on an assistant during the case. They get full control of the camera. When they started with this system in 1999, the company has a similar mission statement that we have now, which is expanding the benefits of minimally invasive surgery to the broadest base of patients. The original idea, like I talked about, was that we wanted this to come out for open heart surgery. The problem in 2000, when this came out for commercial use, the technology wasn't ready for heart surgery. So we have this famous line at Intuitive that we aim for the heart and we hit the prostate. And at that time in 2000, it's a kind of a lucky story. There's a surgeon by the name of Manny Menon at Henry Ford Hospital, and he had a cardiac surgeon friend, and he saw this robot. He said, this would be great for the surgeries I do. And at that time, 1 out of 6 men get prostate cancer in their life. And at that time, 97% of prostate cancer surgery was done open surgery. And as a prostate cancer surgery, there's a lot of important nerves and things around there that us men care about. And it's down in a very small area, so it's a tough, challenging procedure to do open with big hands and to see down in the pelvis. So this Manny Menon started using the robot for this procedure, and we knew right away from early outcomes that this was going to be the future of robotics. Fast forward to today, 98% of all prostate cancer surgery done in the United States is done with a Da Vinci robot. So robotics has eliminated open surgery for this procedure. Knowing that it was good at working in the pelvis, we then started working with gynecologists. We got FDA approval in 2005 to work with gynecologic surgeons, and got FDA approval to do hysterectomy procedures. At that time in Iowa, 70% were done open surgery. Fast forward today, 78% are now done with the Da Vinci robot in the state of Iowa. But the technology kept continuing to get better. We worked in urology and gynecology, and then with the advanced instrumentation coming out that we could put onto those surgical arms, we could start working with some different specialties of surgeons. This is the growth here by specialty, so urology is in green. This is from 2009 to 2019. Urology still continued to grow. We're highly penetrated in the United States, but Intuitive and robotics has become worldwide, and some of the other countries are just a little, like 5 years behind us, so we can anticipate the growth they're having. And we know the specialties that they'll be getting into. Gynecology is what you see in yellow, and then this is usually blue, but this ramp, this is general surgery. General surgeons do a lot of different procedures. They do stomach, they do colons, almost anything from tongue-based resections all the way down to the groin area in a soft tissue organ is a potential robotic procedure that can be done. Where we stand today, there's been over 10 million robotic procedures done in the world, 6,500 Da Vinci systems, over 24,000 peer-reviewed studies on the value of robotics to patients, and over 55,000 surgeons trained on the Da Vinci. And so that's what my team does here locally. We're on the clinical team, so we train the staff and surgeons on how to use it. So our team is in the surgery, and we help surgeons get through the learning curves. We take them to observe other surgeon techniques, and then we're with them until they're comfortable without having an intuitive rep there. I think the big misconception is people hear the word robot. So you probably think, well, this robot's gonna be doing my operation. But the robot is just a tool. It's 100% controlled by a surgeon. It's also a computer-assisted tool. So you get the ability to add some things when you put a computer between a tool and a surgeon, and some pretty cool things, which I'll show you here in a little bit. A Da Vinci robot, the standard one, the list price right now is about $1.9 million. So it has to make sense, and hospitals have to have a return on investment if you're gonna invest in technology like this. This is a study done by Milliman. I'm not sure if anyone's heard of Milliman. They're one of the largest actuarial firms in the world, and they specialize in healthcare. In 2015, they came out with a study where they evaluated the cost of a patient having an open surgery and the cost of a patient having a minimally invasive surgery. And they evaluated that patient from when they walked in the hospital to the next 30 days out. And that 30 days is important because when they get a reimbursement from insurance, it lasts for that patient for up to 30 days. So they looked at 4 common procedures. This is a colon resection, a hernia repair, a lung resection, and a benign hysterectomy. And when they evaluated the cost, on a colon resection, a hospital saved $12,000 to do it minimally invasive, $5,000 on a ventral hernia repair to do it minimally invasive, $12,000 on a lung resection, and almost $1,000 on a benign hysterectomy. So what Milliman found was that the cheapest way to treat a patient was actually to give them the best outcomes, not the cheapest surgery. And so, excuse the cheesy analogy, but it was the things not at the tip of the iceberg, like instrument costs, capital costs, the OR costs, but it was the outcomes that were more important. Things like length of stay, ICU admissions, blood transfusions, complications. And Becker's Healthcare in 2019 actually put a dollar amount on what those cost for hospitals, each of these complications. And as you can imagine, if you have an outcome that isn't great, and you have a few of them, what this can do to cost add up, and how much that takes away from that 30-day reimbursement that they get from the insurance company. And so what is the technology, not only is it cheaper for a hospital to do a minimally invasive surgery, they're actually reimbursed more. This changes from state to state and for different procedures. This is just an example of Medicare, Medicaid patients in Iowa for some benign procedures, but almost a $1,500 difference on an inguinal hernia repair, $4,000 on an incisional hernia repair, and a hysterectomy almost $3,000. So it's cheaper to do, and you can get reimbursed. The trends are favoring hospitals getting reimbursed more to offer better outcomes to patients. Usually when Medicare or Medicaid do it, private pay will follow too, so that's always a good sign. It's for much better reimbursements are for hospitals. So some of the technology that allows to have some of these great outcomes. We're actually on our 4th generation robot right now. And so our current one, the slide got a little messed up here, but we have universal components, that surgeon console and vision tower, and then we have 3 different patient carts that adapt to it, almost like a plug and play. And there are 3 different price points, so when we talk to rural hospitals, we can get them our Da Vinci X system. If they do more complex surgery that they want to get to, we have a Da Vinci Xi offering for them. I'll get into our SP, what that will be coming out. What's also neat is this other console over here can attach to this one here, and you can have 2 surgeons operating at the same time. And so you think education and learning and resident training is extremely important for hospitals and healthcare. And so the dual console is almost like a driver's ed. The surgeon can put a brake, or there's 4 arms controlled by the robot. So they can give them one hand just to start the operation. And then they can press a pedal where it's almost like a brake where it'll stop if we need to. What's also neat, and we're pretty excited about, we've got a skills simulator. So a backpack that's on one of these surgeon consoles, any of the surgeons or resident or even some staff training can just turn this on while they're there on call. They can start doing some of these drills. You'll see skills, procedures, and links. So there's a lot of skills drills just to get them the basic terminology. There's foot pedals on the robot too. That's how they move the camera around to different areas of the anatomy. There's another pedal that switches between their 3 arms. We only have 2. So you can press a pedal that switches between these other 2. And they'll grab tissue, retract, lock it by hitting the pedal, and then go to work after they've exposed themselves. These simulator drills help them get good and develop that muscle memory while they're doing it. Muscle memory is important. I don't know if you've ever changed where your silverware is in the kitchen. You're probably always going back to that old spot. What's also really neat in this is procedure simulation. A surgeon now could warm up and do your procedure before they actually do it. Or they can have the resident that's going to do it and not just try to teach them there, but they can actually teach them in a simulated environment before. Just like an iPhone, what's really neat is this can be updated continuously as we come out with different procedures or different techniques. The simulator also has links. They can go on before the procedure, sit at the console while they're setting up the room, and watch that procedure being done by some of our most efficient and high volume surgeons. They can see the instruments they use, they can see the dissection technique and exposure. So we're really excited where we can go with the simulation. This instrument, it's called a synchroseal. So there's always, depending the organ you need to get to, you probably need to go through some tissue and some blood vessels. And so this instrument, it's got a nice fine tip, so it's a great dissector, but it could also, if you grasp tissue and you press one of the foot pedals at the surgeon console, it'll seal that blood vessel and it'll cut it in less than 2 seconds and with very, very little thermal spread. It's pretty neat, some of the energy they can apply on these things and how efficiently they can get it to reach where they need to go. Probably what we're most excited about, I'm going to skip to the video here to maybe explain better. Stapling is probably one of the most important instruments in all of surgery. If you imagine having a stack of papers and you staple it, and that staple height wasn't thick enough for that paper, and the paper slides out. Now imagine if that's tissue or a very important organ. And so when you can put a computer between that stapler and the surgeon, and we can actually have it read the tissue while it's firing, stop, and make it compress longer, so it always has that perfect V-form staple line as it goes through. You've seen a surgeon press the foot pedal there, it's reading the tissue. It's not real tissue, it's actually giving the surgeon live feedback on where it's at on that firing process. Angles are very important in surgery. We have our stapler articulates more than any stapler on the world, and it has technology behind it to always ensure a good V-form staple so there's less leaks, and there'll be some cool studies coming out on that. Different heights, so you'll see some of the colors they show. Those are just for different staple heights for depending on what organ or tissue that you're going to staple. They'll give feedback on what they're doing with that. I'll just forewarn, this is a surgical image coming up, so if it makes anybody comfortable, I would urge you to look away. But if I was to ask you in this picture where an important blood vessel was, it would be pretty challenging to figure out. With our camera and imaging, we can now inject certain dyes in through an IV that's already placed, and very affordable dyes, and we can make vessels light up. This is the exact same picture, that instrument there, there's the scissors right there, and you can see exactly where that blood vessel's coming through. So what's neat is we can inject these dyes and we can see through tissue, beyond where the human eyes could see and big hands can. When this is just vessels, and you can imagine where we can go with this when you inject some dyes and we can light other very, very important things up in surgery to give surgeons more information to make better decisions intraoperatively, or to make sure that before you're closed up and you're trying to return home to the family, that maybe all the cancer's out before and you don't have to worry about readmissions. So it's this camera technology is something, the future stuff that we're pretty fired up. Also, the robot is a computer, so we know when it's attached, we know what instruments were in there, we know how much those instruments cost, we know what surgeon and did what surgery. So all of this data for 26 years has been going to a cloud, and surgeons and hospitals ask us for it. It's part of my job when we work with administrators and hospitals. They want data, they want to know how long their case times are, and we can also take that and compare them to where they rank across the rest of the country, or if they're too expensive on this, and what are ways we can work with you to actually use less of our instrumentation to make it more affordable for your hospital. So with all that information, now a surgeon has an app, and I don't know if anyone has the watches. I have an Apple Watch. When I track my data, I care more about it, and we think this is going to be the same thing with surgeons. They'll have their app to log in when they sit on the console, and after the case, they'll get all their metrics of what their time was, what their cost was, how that compared. And then with machine learning, we know what procedure it is and how they were moving, and we can give them advice on what simulator drills to actually improve and enhance on that skill. finally, and this is kind of, this is the end goal and something we'd like to go. This video doesn't show it as good as I like, but you saw in that one incision, or one picture where there's 4 incisions, and we're now going to be coming out with a single port robot. So maybe instead of 4 or 5 incisions, what about 1 in the belly button? And in a robot that could go anywhere into the body, and through that 1 port would come out. They wouldn't just have wrists like our normal instruments, but they'd have elbows. So then there's spacing once it gets inside the body to move and retract, and in our camera that can articulate all the way around. So if you think of it, it would almost be like incisionless surgery, because you can hide that incision in the belly button, and you can do some very, very high complex surgeries all through that incision. So that's what I got today. Thank you. Excited for questions.
I had the experience with the Vinci machine surgical about 11 years ago at Johns Hopkins. My question is, how long does it typically take for a surgeon to be educated on the machine?
Yes. So we've gotten a lot better. The learning curve used to be a lot longer, and as robotics has continued to grow, we've gotten better at our resources, and our team has got better at training surgeons. And now we have, sorry, repeat the question. What is the learning curve like essentially for a surgeon to do robotics? And so we've gotten a lot better. We now have an exact pathway, and we have a pathway that was made by surgeons who have been through a learning curve on how to best get through it to treat patients. So just in a quick review, the first thing, if someone's interested, and I said, before we decide anything, let's just go see somebody, and you can evaluate if this is something that would be good for you and your patients. And so we'll go fly to one of our, we call them epicenters, of somebody that's done over 500 to 1,000 procedures, so they can see efficiencies and some of the skills that they have. And then if they decide from there, we've got a training pathway to practice in the OR, some of the simulation stuff, and we do we do proctored cases, so experienced surgeons will actually be in there for the first few. And again, it's the robot word, but it's just a tool. And so they already know the surgery. It's just how this tool can help with the procedures. Yes?
Yeah. What is the reasoning behind Medicare and Medicaid paying more? There must be some ultimate cost savings.
Yeah, I think it's just from that study that they're realizing, because it wasn't always like that, and these are just some early benign trends. But I think they're realizing that it is better for patients and hospitals, and so they're finding it rewarding hospitals to find ways to be able to do more minimally invasive surgery.
Patient benefit.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Which good, it aligns with healthcare and how it should be.
Sure.
Now, some surgeon reimbursements are different. They may not be aligned with that, or depending what they do. Yes.
You had the one chart, with the lines growing up to the right.
Yep.
The bottom one hadn't moved near as much. I think maybe it's in thoracic. Or
Yes.
something. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so he's talking about the chart that showed the growth by specialty, and there was 2 lines in the bottom that weren't growth. So on the vertical axis of that was procedure volume, and the one was thoracic. So the thoracic line, volume-wise, there just isn't that many lung cancer procedures compared to the other ones. That being said, we are 44% of thoracic surgery is done with the Vinci robot right now, and it's growing rapidly. So it'll be a huge focus of what we're working on with surgeons and hospitals.
Did you have, with the challenge of rural hospitals and staffing, could a surgeon do it in New York, connect to a robot in a small town, or they have to be work?
Yeah. So the question was, with staffing challenges, could a surgeon in a rural hospital potentially do a surgery in volume? The technology is there to do it. The FDA won't allow it. They want cords and they want those surgeons in the rooms, and fair enough. That said, so in the state of Iowa, we have over 50 Da Vinci systems. There's 9 now in Des Moines. And so we have like rural hospitals as Pella, Oskaloosa, Fordham, Iowa, Manchester, Iowa, all have Da Vinci systems, and they'll usually get in at one of our X systems, the lower price point ones.
Well, the way you talk, it sounds like you almost don't really have competition. Are there competitors?
Great question. I was ready for this one. I even had it on Thank you. I teed him up for that one. It was weird, but when I started this job in 2010, we had right around 1,000 employees. And And then in 2015, we had about 2,000, and today we have over 11,000. And so when we started, there was a lot of pushback from other companies because we were only in urology, and then we were just starting in gynecology, and they didn't think it was going to take off. And then bad studies would come out, well, it takes too long, it costs too much. And then we started to get into general surgery and some of these advanced energy instruments like stapling and the SynchroSeal. And once you start taking that business away from companies, stapling's a multiple billion-dollar business. And once we got into that, all the companies started coming. So Medtronic is going to be the first one to come. They're a huge company. They'll be out. They already started trials in another country. Johnson & Johnson teamed up with Google. They're coming. There's over 12 different companies, and if you start looking at the technology and you really think of the logistics in the operating room, the Medtronic is this one in the bottom right. It's going to be the first one to start competing with us. This is their patient cart. It's got one arm on it. Our patient cart has 4. So they have to drive 4 different carts up to the patient. When we drive 4 different carts, that's 8 different cords going across the room. And then imagine if you have to have an emergency conversion in that operation, or you have to have one circulator come pull out 4 different patient carts. Logistically, it's going to be a struggle, I think, but I'm biased. And so that's Medtronic. There's other companies, but these look like our 3rd generation systems. They've all sold, they've already started talking to hospitals that will be cheaper and a smaller footprint. But competition's good. It's going to drive down prices. It's going to create urgency to have great products, and selfishly, it makes me more valuable as an employee with robotics experience. Yes?
So tell me about the interest of the military, because I have to believe they are very interested in what they would see as, especially out in battle areas,
Yeah.
and they need this type of
The question was around the military, how it started, and if there's any interest there. So not that I've heard of. I think the reality is they learned that doing emergent cases like that, where they really just need to get there and have hands-on, I think there's a lot of challenges logistically in doing that. So I don't know, but we are actually starting to see a growth in, early on as robotics has started, and still most places, it's scheduled elective procedures. But now we're starting to open up, and surgeons are believing it so much, we're doing 24/7 access to a robot. So that no matter what your issue is that you come in, it shouldn't matter the kind of care that you get. And some surgeons really believe in doing robotics versus open for some of these emergent cases. So we have more hospitals that we're working on how to launch 24/7 robotic access. Basically, we're starting to train all of the staff instead of a dedicated robotics team, which is what it was like when I started. Yep.
Interesting talk, thank you.
Thank you.
If you had a top 5 list of visions for the future of what you see as a salesperson talking to, doctors, hospitals on the front line, what are they asking for?
So the question was, what are our customers asking for, and how do we kind of anticipate the future? One, you're seeing it here with competition. There's a reason that there's over 12 companies coming out with robotic systems. And so and hospitals are asking for competition. They want the price less than $1.9 million. And so, there's part of that, and really what, when we meet with executives now, we find out areas where they do a lot of open surgeries, and we find how we can align and partner to work with those surgeons. And so they'll start either introducing us, or we've been in the operating room enough to start meeting those people. But even now, so if a patient comes back and you get readmitted, and a certain percentage of hospitals starting to get dinged on that. So outcomes are becoming more and more important. And so they're working with ways on how we can align together on doing that. That answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I got a follow-up. So how busy are these pieces of equipment in the 24-hour cycle?
So some of them right now, 7 to 3. And then that staff leaves that's all trained, and the night staff comes in where it will stop, or whatever procedures are going. So that's where one of the big challenges, and that's something we're bringing more resources on how to start doing that. We have a lot of rural accounts where it's a small community hospital, so we can train everybody and do enough surgery where everybody knows how to do it. And they do 24/7, no matter what you come in, everybody knows how to do the robot. But there's definitely some staff training from knowing how to do this too.
So another one. I look at, physicians, clinics, like sports, professional
Yep.
sports. You've got your, major league teams, major league players, you've got, the AAA. Does that happen in your, area? Are you
Yes.
seeing that?
Yeah, I think he was just asking on where you go, who you see, is there a difference? And one thing we're trying to do with seeing some of these things beyond the human eye, and our company's called Intuitive, so every instrument you move, you become more precise. If we can make you see things that you may not have seen, and give you more information to make decisions intraoperatively, can we decrease variability from the best surgeon to maybe someone down here? And so that's what you hear that word from us a lot of time. We're trying to decrease variability in the operating room, and we're trying to do that with some of this technology. But yeah, there's a difference, and yeah, I'll leave it there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
How do you clean the equipment? You just hose it down with a big...
Yeah. My dad's got a power washer, he loves it. No, there's a whole, just as in any reusable instruments and all open surgical instruments that get reprocessed, we have we have another team that comes in and will train the hospital staff on how to do all of our instruments. Our instruments, they have anywhere from 12 to 20 uses on them. And so they're computerized instruments that get reprocessed. So we've got FDA approval on a certain amount of uses they can have. You also want them to be sharp and want them to work well. That said, because they're a computer and advanced instrument, you want it to be cleaned properly and done right. So that's why there's a certain amount of uses on each of them.
So as someone who had an open surgery in 2008, this is amazing. I wish it was available so I don't have to lay in bed for 12 weeks. But is there any sort of disclosure that goes into, like, as a patient shows up for their surgery, do they know a robotic arm is doing it versus a surgeon? Or do you get any pushback from that sort of?
Yeah, so the question was, is there any disclosure if it's going to be a robotic procedure or not? And it's really all surgeon dependent. And so I know some of them absolutely do. I think what they'll do is the patient walk in, they're going to share with you what your options are. I can do it open, it's going to be a bigger incision, use my hands, I can feel, I can use my own eyes. We also have a robot that can do it, but again, it's the misconceptions that a robot's going to do something on its own, where it's 100% a tool, just as a hammer would be, and things like that. But yeah, that's always a question, at least when we start new programs, that they'll be asked, do we have to have disclosures and things like that. So I just tell them whatever your hospital credentialing policies require.
Does the system ever correct a doctor when they might be making mistakes? Is there such a thing as that?
If you almost think so, if we can make things light up and the computer knows potentially don't touch that red area, there can definitely be warnings potentially to come in the future, if I had to guess. But not right now, but we have a simulator that can give feedback on specific skills. And just as you're saying that, it's also with the machine learning. You might think, well, what happens if the robot breaks during the case? I think it's less than 0.35% now before the robot is going to have a failure mid-operation where we can't continue. Because of all the machine learning and it connects to the internet, we can almost pre-detect when it's going to happen because of historic things, so we can get ahead of it now. That's kind of a big part of our service contract with hospitals.
Sure. Thanks for your presentation, Brett. It's been great. Tough question. I'm sure you get asked this, and you would expect nothing else, people, from me, provocative. When does the machine take over? We no longer need
Yeah, it's a great question. When does the machine take over? And this happens a lot. And I'll answer it how I heard our CEO answer it. He said it because I'm not getting an airplane without a pilot, but planes can fly themselves. And so he said, our goal is, just how I've said a few times, is to give you information to make decisions. And so our stapler that you saw there, the surgeon will put it exactly where they want, and they're going to press 2 pedals to actually activate it. But once they do that and they made the right decision of where it should go and how it should be, the computer takes over and does the rest. It reads the tissue as it fires, it pauses for a little bit so it can make sure it has good formation. And then it will finish going, maybe pause again. And so we're slowly doing it on things like that, but not overall. I think that's a long, long time coming. Just as like the car, we would talk about cars forever. And there's some cool things of it, but when it comes to actual operation, you need the surgeon is so important. Yes.
Is there any special supervision or assistance for a physician on the first try on a human patient?
Essentially, so what's neat now, so almost all hospitals require 5 proctored surgeries. So again, the surgeon knows the surgery, but now it's a new tool. So they require an experienced surgeon that has to come in, let's say for 150 surgeon experience, but they have to be there with the first 5. And but then you're flying people around, and it can be very hard to do, especially with COVID. And so, being that it's a computer, we're now going to have to where surgeons, almost like a 1-800 number, where you can call this bank of experienced surgeons that have done over 500 surgeries on this procedure. If they're in a tough spot in the case, they can call, and that surgeon, with privacy and all the legal things, can go and actually see the screen that's on and communicate with that surgeon to help them get through a certain part. So it'll be exciting to see the telepresence side of the future.
Thank you so much. That was fascinating. In your honor, we are donating a book to our Rotary Rosie Reader Van through the Des Moines Public Library Foundation. Last year, as all of our Rotarians recall, our Rotary Club of Des Moines Foundation donated $40,000 to purchase the van through our community grant program. Upcoming meetings here at the Embassy Club. I encourage you, like we have today, quite a number of guests, so I encourage all of you to think about who might be interested in coming as a guest, and would that guest then be interested in becoming a future member of Rotary Club of Des Moines. So coming up on February 3rd, we have Kim Perez. She is President and CEO of the Greater Des Moines Botanical Gardens. February 10th, Warren Erickson, President of AE Dairy, will be here. And then February 17th is our Fling, hosted by Matt and his lovely wife, Betsy. So we will not have a lunch meeting that week because of the February Fling. I would remind you that you do need to register in advance. Same thing with guests. Guests can be registered up to 9 a.m. on Wednesdays. And guest registration is done through Kitty, and that can be done either via email or by the phone. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you so much for being with us today.